You're listening to World of Empowerment Radio, your station for practical spirituality in a changing world. And here are your hosts, Aingeal Rose and Ahonu.
I am Ahonu, and I want to tell you a story. It's not a big story. It doesn't involve great drama or extraordinary events. It involves a coin, a small silver coin, and a kitchen table in Holy Catholic Ireland, and a child who watched. My father, after drinking 10 times the amount, used to leave a half-crown on our old formica top kitchen table for my mother each week. And for those of you who don't know, a half-crown was the Old English and Old Irish currency from way before the euro, even back before decimalisation. It was a small, heavy coin with a harp on one side and a horse on the other. My guess, in today's money, it probably would be worth around $5, maybe $7. Either way, not enough to feed or clothe a young family. And that was it for the week. He'd leave it on the kitchen table, and then he'd head straight up the stairs to bed without another word. I remember watching my mother pick it up, and I can still remember the sound of it, that small flat sound it made when she lifted it from the kitchen table. And I remember thinking, even as a small child, that's not enough. That's not enough to feed us. That's not enough to clothe us. That's not enough to keep the cold out. That's not enough to show that He loves us. We went hungry sometimes, and we were cold sometimes too. But my mother made do, the way Irish mothers and mothers all over the world of that generation made do, with a kind of quiet, fierce dignity that I didn't fully understand until I was much older. But as a child, I understood one thing very clearly. My father left a half-crown, and it wasn't enough. Now, I carried that story for 60 years. I carried it the way you carry something you don't even know you're carrying. In the way I thought about money, in the way I thought about what I deserved, in the way I thought about men, about fathers, about love. I carried it in my body. I carried it in my choices. I carried it in the quiet, persistent belief that there was never quite enough. Well, that half-crown became the lens through which I saw the world, and I didn't even know it. But here's something I've come to understand about the stories that we carry from childhood. They're not just memories, they're decisions. Real life decisions that have an impact on us. Because something happens, and in the moment it happens, we're too young, too small, too unequipped to understand it fully. So we make a decision about what it means. My father left a half-crown. That's the fact. But it's the meaning I gave it. That was my decision, even if I didn't know I was making it. And the meaning that I choose was, he doesn't care enough. We're not worth more than this. There's never enough. And more importantly, I am not enough. And here's the extraordinary thing about the meaning that we assign to these kinds of things in childhood. They don't stay in the past. They travel with us all our lives. They shape what we expect. They shape what we accept. They shape what we believe we deserve from life, from love, and from the world. That half-crown on a kitchen table in rural Ireland became a belief system that I carried all my life. A belief system about scarcity, about being overlooked, about love being conditional and insufficient. And I want to ask you something now, because in my experience and my last 20 years with Aingeal Rose, I don't think I'm alone in believing this. I want to know, what is your half-crown? Think about it. Think about it deeply. What is that small, specific thing from your past that became the lens through which you now see everything? It might not be money. It might be a word someone said, or a door that was closed in your face, or a hand that wasn't extended. A moment when someone looked through you instead of at you. It might be something so ordinary that you've never even named it, but it's there, and it's been shaping your life far longer than you realize. You see, I judged my father for years. Not out loud, not dramatically. I didn't rage against him. I simply held him in a quiet, settled verdict inside myself. He was inadequate. He was absent. He was not enough. And because he was not enough, somewhere deep in the logic of a child's heart, neither was I. And that is the hidden cost of judgment that nobody tells you about. When we judge another person, especially a parent, we don't just diminish them, we diminish ourselves. Because we're made of them. We come from them. And when we decide that they were not enough, we're quietly, invisibly deciding the same thing about ourselves. Now, all through those years, I know I didn't know any of this consciously. I just knew that no matter what I achieved, no matter what I built, no matter how much I arrived in my life, there was always a quiet voice underneath it that said, it's not enough. You're not enough. There's never quite enough. A half crown on a kitchen table, still speaking decades later. Now, I can't give you a precise date. I can't tell you it was a Tuesday in November or that I was sitting in a particular chair. It wasn't that kind of moment. It was quieter than that. It was more like a door opening slowly in a room I'd forgotten existed. What I found was I began to think about my father differently. It wasn't because someone told me to, or that I knew I had to engage in some great forgiveness. And it wasn't because I read a book about it, though I had read many books. It wasn't because I forced myself to feel something that I didn't feel. It happened because I began to ask a different question. Instead of asking, why didn't he give us more? I began to ask, what was his past? What was he carrying? What led him to that point in his life? What did he go through in order to make those kinds of decisions? And I found my father was a man of his time and his place. He grew up in an Ireland that didn't teach men to speak about love, that didn't give men the language of tenderness or the permission to be vulnerable. It was an Ireland that measured a man's worth by his labour and his silence and his endurance. And it came to me that he came out of the scarcity of 2 world wars himself. He was only doing what he knew best. Out of his own vulnerability, he was giving what he believed he could. And when I truly let that sink in, when I stopped defending my judgment of him and actually let the truth arrive deep inside me, something extraordinary happened. My memory changed. Now, how can a memory change? I know that sounds impossible. I know memory is supposed to be fixed. It's like a permanent record, an archive, because we believe what happened, happened. But that's not how memory actually works. Memory is not a photograph. It's a living thing. It breathes, it shifts, it responds to the meaning that we give it. And when the meaning changes, when I stopped seeing a man who didn't care and started seeing a man who was doing his absolute best under circumstances that I had never fully considered, the image in my mind changed with it. What I had perceived as a miserable half-crown became something else. In my new understanding of him, my father wasn't leaving a coin on a table and walking away. He was arriving. He was bringing everything he had to that table. In my mind's eye, I saw him carrying a sack full to the brim of everything he was capable of giving. No, it wasn't a sack of money. It wasn't a sack of food and clothing, though those things were in the sack too. But it was a sack of love, expressed in the only language that he knew. He was showing up. He was providing. He was enduring. He was returning. He was giving. He was fathering. And he was loving. And I found my tears started to flow. I cried like the little boy I was back then. But it wasn't from sadness, not from grief, though there was plenty of grief in it. I was crying from relief. Why? Because the story I'd been carrying for 60 years, the story of the man who left too little, wasn't the only story. It wasn't even the true story. It was simply the story that I had chosen to tell myself when I was too young to choose differently. And now, I am old enough. Now, I can choose again. And my own wonderful Aingeal Rose reminded me of a lesson in A Course in Miracles that I've returned to many times over the years. And it says simply, I could choose peace instead of this. That's only 7 words, deceptively simple. But yet, it's profoundly radical. It was never that I should choose peace. And it wasn't, I must try harder to feel peace in my everyday life. Instead, it was, I could choose peace instead of this. It is available to me right now, in this moment, in this memory, in this story that I've been telling myself for all those years. I could choose peace instead of this. And that is exactly what I did. That is exactly what happened with my father. I choose peace instead of the story of the half-crown. And in choosing peace, I didn't erase the past, nor did I pretend that it didn't happen. I didn't manufacture a kind of false happiness about something that was genuinely hard. I simply changed what it meant to me. I simply changed the meaning. And that meaning changed everything. And there's something deep in all of this, and why I'm telling you is because this is what I want you to understand. Because this is the heart of everything that I'm sharing with you today. The fact is, the event didn't change. My father still left a half-crown on the table. That is still true and always will be true. That still happened. but the meaning I gave it, the story I built around it, that was never fixed. That was always mine to hold or to release. And that is what I have let go. And that is what I would encourage you to do the same. Because we think our suffering comes from what happened to us. But most of our suffering comes from the meaning we decided to give what happened to us. And meaning, unlike the past, can be changed right now, today, in this very moment. What I've learned is that forgiveness is not about excusing someone's behavior. And it's certainly not about pretending something was fine when it wasn't. It's really not about the other person at all. Forgiveness is about freeing yourself from the prison of a meaning that is costing you your peace. And it was costing me my peace. It's about choosing consciously, deliberately, with full awareness to see things differently. And that led to a wonderful forgiveness of my father. And when I forgave him, I didn't just free him from my judgment. I freed myself from the identity that I had built around that judgment. I had been, without knowing it, the child of a man who didn't give enough. That was my identity. That was the foundation of my relationship with abundance, with worthiness, and with love. And when I forgave him, that identity dissolved. And in its place, something extraordinary happened. I became the child of a man who gave everything he had. A man who showed up. A man who endured 2 world wars and the Great Depression. A man who loved in the only language that was available to him in his time. He was a man carrying a sack of plenty. And I want to tell you something. That shift was not small. That shift changed how I receive abundance, how I receive love, how I receive my own life. Because when you come from plenty, even if that plenty was expressed as a half-crown, you move through the world differently. You expect differently. You allow differently. You become different. And now, in the last few minutes, I'd like to invite you to do something. It's not a big thing, nor is it a difficult thing, but it's just a moment of honest looking. So get yourself comfortable and close off all distractions and close your eyes and take a deep breath and let your shoulders drop and relax into the present moment where you are, right here, right now. I want you to think of one person in your life, past or present, whom you have judged. It doesn't have to be someone you hate, or it doesn't have to be someone who hurt you badly. Just someone you've held in a quiet, settled verdict inside yourself. Someone you decided, like I did, at some point was not enough, or was too much, or was wrong, or let you down. And don't dismiss that thought. Don't diminish it. Let their face come to your mind, but don't force anything. Be gentle with yourself. And don't try to feel differently yet. Just let them be there. Do that now. Now ask yourself gently, without pressure, just one question. What were they carrying? What were they dealing with? And other questions may follow from that. What did they come from? What was it that they did not know? What were they never taught? Or what were they afraid of? What were they trying to do, even if they did it badly in your eyes? What was the best that they were capable of, given who they were, where they came from, what they endured, what they had been given to work with? Now think deeply about that. And remember, you don't have to excuse them. You don't have to pretend that everything was fine. You don't have to feel warmth towards them right now if warmth isn't there. Just ask the question, what were they carrying? And now, I've got one more question, but this one is for you. And think deeply about this one. What has it cost you to carry this judgment all this time? What has it cost you in peace, in openness, in your relationship with abundance, with love, with your own sense of worthiness? What has it cost you to be the person who was not given enough? And now, just as a possibility, certainly not a demand, it's not a requirement, it's just as a door you might consider opening. Think of that Course in Miracles lesson. What if you could choose peace instead of this? And what if the story that you've been carrying is not enough? What if the story you've been carrying is not the only story? What if the meaning you choose when you were too young to choose differently, just like I was? What if that could be chosen again, differently, right now? Take a deep breath now. And when you're ready, open your eyes. And think of what has happened. My father is gone now. And I can't go back and have the conversation I might have had with him. I can't tell him what I came to understand. I can't watch his face change when I say, I know you were doing your best. I know you loved us. I know the half-crown was everything you had. But here is something that I do know. The conversation happened anyway. But it didn't happen in the physical world, but in the only place that has ever mattered. In the meaning that I carry inside myself. I changed the story. And in changing the story, I changed everything the story had been creating in my life. Of course, the half-crown never changed. My father never changed. The past never changed. It was the meaning that I gave it that changed. And when the meaning changed, I changed. This is the miracle that's available to every single one of us. It's not the miracle of the past being different. It's the miracle of us seeing it differently right now. It's the miracle of choosing right now, today, in this very moment, to look at what we were given and ask, what if this was love? What if this was the best that was possible? What if that sack was always full and I simply couldn't see it yet? So, you are not the child who was not given enough. You never were. You were the child of someone who was doing their absolute best. Perhaps imperfectly, inadequately by some measures, but with everything they had. And that is enough. That has always been enough. The sack was always full. And that quote from A Course in Miracles has remained my favorite for many years. I could choose peace instead of this. And that is exactly what I did. And it changed my life. Let it change yours. Thank you.
You have been listening to Aingeal Rose and Ahonu on World of Empowerment Radio, your station for practical spirituality in a changing world.